let's round this out with this, y'all. This running back rotation. I think this is the room that, like I believe, I think a lot of us believe it's going to be hard to keep some of these guys around. Jam Miller, coming back. That really made this room kind of confusing to me. I think Jam Miller had a solid campaign, maybe to be a solid second, third round pick, in this year's draft. He's a guy I believe just needs to get on roster at the next level, and not doesn't need to be a first round pick to have a long career at the next level. Coming into this season, you look at the depth chart there: Jam Miller, Richard Young, Daniel Hill, Dre Washington, Kevin Riley, A.K. Deer to round out that running back rotation. What do you all see from this group, starting with Coach Jeff? You talked about the interior run game being a thing that we need to focus on and allow this offensive line to build up. But what from the running backs can we see differently this year going into year two under Kalen DeBoer's scheme, but having Ryan Grubb as a play caller? What do you see coming from this offensive run game?
What I want to see from the run game is just more running the ball. I want to see running backs getting more involved. Like I said, I know NIL is a major factor. I get that Michigan's doing great in that department, but Justice Haynes left Alabama because he was not getting utilized that much. Him and Jam Miller were underutilized heavily last year. And I'm not saying that if we had to run the ball with them a lot more, we would have been significantly better last year because, yes, our offensive line was kind of weak. But still, at the same time, if we had to mix it up more, at least try our best to keep defenses honest instead of it just being Milrow running the ball and then throwing all day, I think we could have been better. But that's in the past. This year, though, we've got Jam Miller as our bell cow back. He's going to get the significant amount of carries. Like you said, Coach, a guy that definitely could have left for the draft last year despite being underutilized because he still was very good in the attempts that he was given last season. But with him being back, it is massive for us because he's one of the better, if not top 3 running backs in the SEC for this season. I know you can debate that all day long, but he's going to be one of the best running backs in the SEC. Then behind him, Richard Young, Daniel Hill. Those two guys are definitely vying for running back number 2. I would say Richard Young probably has the edge for being the backup running back, but those two guys, if they're getting involved a lot, then that probably means that our offensive line is doing a lot better. It probably means that our play calling is doing a lot better if they're getting a lot of snaps because those guys have talent. It's never been a talent problem for us at running back because you go throughout the lineage, as Coach Johnny said earlier, Mark Ingram, Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Brian Robinson. You can just go on and on. We've had so many great running backs the last 15, 20 years under Nick Saban, and we still have great running backs. They just need to be utilized. And our offensive line needs to be better this year, which I think it will be. And with Ty Simpson not being a running quarterback to the degree at all of a Jalen Milrow, he's not going to be running that much. We need to use our running backs. We have talented running backs. Jam Miller probably gets 60, 65% of the carries, you would think, and then the other 35 can be bevied up to the other guys. But definitely I want to see more Richard Young and I want to see more Daniel Hill because I know those guys are ready to play. But if they're getting a lot of snaps, that probably means that our offensive line and running game are doing a much better this season and getting a lot more snaps.
100%. And you said something that was key. Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb never had a quarterback have more than 100 rushing attempts in a season up until Jalen Milrow. So that's 7 seasons of play calling together. A lot of quarterbacks live with handing the ball off. Jalen Milrow didn't understand that last season, and we saw that affect the offense. To a certain degree because of his athleticism. Some of those selfish calls they turned out to be big plays. Just his natural athleticism. You kind of lived and you died with some of the decision making. But I think this year you're talking about 488 rushing attempts. Dialed up rushing attempts with his offensive play calling compared to 226 passes attempted, right? You got to think out of those 600 700 play calls or snaps called, plays called, maybe another 25-30% of those were actually meant for passes or actual handoffs. So I like the numbers being a little bit more spread out. I like Jam Miller to be right where he was last year, right at 140 150 carries for the season. But then those 168 that we saw from Jalen Milrow, I think 100 of those get cut from the quarterback. And you see guys like the third running back who had 79. The third guy with the most carries had 79 is Justin Haynes. He has 25 more to put him at that 100 mark. Then you see the fourth guy, Richard Young, who would be the second guy this year. You see him with at least 20, 25 more. And I think the numbers really level out to show you how balanced this offense really is. I know people try to think that the vertical passing concept, because that's the name of it, we want to attack the verticals. They think it's just passing, but this offense really runs the ball. Ryan Grubb knows how to run the ball, and we're going to see it this year. Coach, talk to me personnel wise, schematically. If you think back to Washington 2023 and Dylan Johnson and how he ran the ball against Texas in that playoff game, do you see a skill set like Dylan Johnson from that Washington team on this roster? And if so, who? If there's more than one, who benefits from being able to run the ball in this offensive scheme, Coach?
Well, I'm just going to tell you point blank with me is for me, I've got to see Jam Miller touch the ball 20 times a game. I want to see him. I want to see him featured, run the ball. I mean, we're supposed to have, this offensive line that's all this blah, 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 and all this other kind of crap. Well, run the ball, win the game, run the ball, control the clock. There were times in Alabama's game, if they could have ran the ball, there we go. But bottom line to me is I have so much confidence in Jam Miller that I think that guy is a Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, and I know y'all are sitting there rolling your eyes and stuff like that. No, I've watched this guy. He is the most underappreciated, underutilized. I mean, I'm gonna run that guy 20 times a game. If this offensive line is supposed to be all this and all that kind of stuff, and I think they are, okay, I'm gonna run the ball. I'm not gonna just, and you know what? That opens up the offense. All right, instead of just trying to pass the ball and put everything, it makes it so much easier. Number one, you got Jam Miller, great running back, and you got Richard Young behind him, another good one. Every time I saw Mr. Young touch the ball, everything was positive. And so you take the pressure off, okay, Ty Simpson, and then now the defense, everybody's got to focus more on, they may, this guy may pop out of there for 15, 20 yards, that kind of stuff, and get back to the old school, type of approach to, offense. So I know may disagree with me, but I really feel like I'm going to run the offense through Jam Miller.
Absolutely. Well, I don't disagree.
I know everybody else is saying, throw it to Ryan. No, I ain't saying that. No, I think you can create better opportunities for Ryan, okay, by focusing, getting back to the old school, run it through Jam Miller. That's what I'm going to do. If I'm calling the plays, I'm going to run that offense through Jam Miller.
I'm going to tell you who I'm running that ball through. I'm running it. A lot of people are high on Jam Miller. I think Jam Miller gets the year where he kind of gets to take the back seat. He gets to be Robin in his running back room. I think Richard Young really blossoms this year, and I think Richard Young ends up being the bell cow. He's literally 2 years behind. One was due to injury, and 1 year was just due to the transition. I think he came in at the perfect opportune time. He is more of the style Dylan Johnson was that we saw thrive in that Washington style in this style of offense when they were able to run the ball. Jam Miller, with his receiving assets, I think that's where you're going to be able to see him featured this year. A lot of these pass sets or a lot of these second and third down where it's second or in between, where you can really confuse the linebacker based off alignment, motioning Jam Miller out into the slot. That's going to be a lot of things. But running the ball, I think Richard Young's rush, I've seen it over the past spring. Even the spring from the first year when Caleb Bordenstaff took over. Richard Young was really the lead guy. If he hadn't got hurt going into the West Kentucky game, I think he ends up being the lead guy for last year's season. So my guy for this year is not Jam Miller. I think there's a 1A, 1B situation going on. Depends on who's doing good Thursday in walkthroughs. That's who's going to get the first carry.
But let me ask you, are you agreeing with me running the offense through either one of those guys?
100%. I believe
that's where I'm going.
The key is to get to the run game. Get to the run game. Get that run game established. This is still the SEC. This is still a physical brand of football. And I think, honestly, we're not giving Ryan Grubb enough credit for understanding that. If you look at why they dominated the pack with Washington in 2023 and 2024, their 10-2 season in 2023 and 22, and then 23 they had the 14-1 season. That team dominated in the interior run game. there was a lot of plays where that first year you saw that offense really break big runs in the interior run game. So I think we're going to get back to what we feel Alabama offense should be in a different look. This is more so of the Jake Coker era of Alabama offense on a more explosive, a more explosive plateau. Instead of it happening 40 times a game, 40 plays a game, you're going to see this 65, 70 plus snaps a game with this offensive style.
The games where we didn't run the ball, where we had 125 rushing yards or less, were the games that we lost, like Georgia, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, and Michigan.
You should lose at that.
Yeah, we almost lost to South Carolina last year, but the games where we ran way more than 125 rushing yards against Missouri, LSU, and Georgia, where we were bringing that magic on those games. And I think that's going to be key right there. Make sure you've got 125 rushing yards or more. And I can't wait to see what our rushing game is going to bring out in 2025. It's going to be amazing.
I can tell you what, if you've got over 200, you're going to win.
Well, it's like you mentioned before, Coach. I remember watching late in games last year. So many games that we could have just ran the clock out with our running backs, and we didn't do that. Yeah. And in years past under Nick Saban, that's what we would do. If we were in a 9-6 game, if we were in a 14-10 type of game, and we had the ball with 2-3 minutes left, we just ran the clock out on them every single time. Because we could just hand the ball off, and we would get the first down. It was going to happen. Make sure that see if they could stop us. And if they couldn't stop us, just running down at their throat. And that's what we did not do last year. So we had so many 3-and-outs late in games where if we could have just been able to run the ball, run the clock out, we would have been able to win easier, or we would have won instead of losing. But instead, we were throwing the ball. Milroe was still trying to do things with the lead, and it just didn't work out. And that's frustrating. That's not Alabama football. That's not what we were known for.
And the last thing I'll say is that ask yourself, how many championship teams did Nick Saban have without a hammer in the backfield?
Mac Jones. Hey. Mac Jones 2020 was the last. Was the first and the last one. You got to think, because even that year, Najee Harris was more impactful in the pass game than he was in the run game. In 2020, I think people fail to realize that. Like, he had a lot of highlight runs, but we still passed the ball 63% of the time. It was not a run heavy style offense. That era of Saban running the ball, that style of running is no longer. You have extensions of the run game now with the quick screens, the jet sweeps down that are accounting for the run game because of how defenses are able to play close to the line of scrimmage with smaller personnel. That's why we keep talking about this 3-3-5 and debating how effective it is. You try to run out there in your traditional 4 defensive linemen out there on the field, you're going to be a guy slow, 60, 70% of the game. You're going to be a guy slow. You might have the size up front to shut that down, but you're going to be a guy slow, meaning you're going to have a defensive end or a true defensive lineman out there or a true linebacker out there that's set to run fit or play, swing routes out of the backfield. But what happens when he gets caught in those wheel concepts, kind of like what we saw from Braswell the last year of Coach Saban and Coach Steele, the two of the greatest defensive minds in college football for the past 20-plus years, out there getting out schemed by Josh Heupel in Tennessee because of formation shifts and noticing a real defensive end out there instead of an athletic outside linebacker. So this is where I think Kane Womack has an edge with his defensive play calling style. And then even also last year with Nick Sheridan offensively, there was a lot of times where if you got overhangs walking down 6 yards, close to the line of scrimmage from the Husky position, yes, I want my quarterback to test that, eat that time and spacing up, and throw the ball. When your wide receivers catch it, it works good. When your offensive line is blocking, it works good. But when you have those two things inconsistent and your quarterback is not confident in making the reads because those two things are inconsistent, you're going to see some inconsistency. So I think this year the continuity is going to be a huge factor in the offensive execution with the offensive line, quarterbacks. I think if a lot of teams play us defensively like they did last year, we're going to see more passing than we're going to see running because of the effectiveness and the understanding of at the quarterback position. Ty Simpson, IQ-wise, is definitely going to be a lot more prepared than Jalen Milroe was last year, knowing the assignments, knowing the calls, knowing what the offensive coordinator is looking for. So I think we're set up good on both sides of the ball. Talking about these few position groups that we talked about tonight, I think we're set up good. I think we're set up for a for possibly a dominant first 6 or 7 games before we start to see a true test against this Alabama Crimson Tide team as a whole.
I do have one more point to make about the running back. So when you
Go ahead,
said,
brother.
Spook, about Najee Harris, being more of in the passing attack, that is a fair point. I feel like what Coach Johnny was mentioning and referencing, though, was the fact that we had a running back featured. Now, to your point, back in those earlier Saban titles, the Mark Ingers, Derrick Henrys, it was exclusively run with those guys. They were just running down the throat. Najee Harris was the beginning of hybrid running back, where basically that quick pass is an extension of the run. If you look at that as an extension of the run game, then yes, Alabama in that 2020 season still had a feature back in Najee Harris. It just wasn't as much running down the throat. It was more passing out of the backfield, short throws, stuff like that. But last year was the first year in just basically forever where Alabama did not feature running backs at all. And that is essentially what needs to return. Whether it's running the ball down the throat or getting our running backs involved in the passing game, however we do it, we just got to get them more involved than they've been in the past, because that will definitely help us get closer to getting back to a championship level. But I agree with you on that point, though. Like, Najee wasn't just running down the throat, but he was catching out of the backfield, but he was still featured, and that's what we did not have last year. It was a featured back. We did not feature any of them at all.
So I pose this question to the chat as we get ready to close out. This year, and we're talking specifically running backs, would you be upset if we didn't have a feature back? Because I think with the skill sets available, you look at Jam Miller, Richard Young, Daniel Hill, I think those are our top 3. Dre Washington, I believe, is a situational back, more so of your goal line featured power run back. Maybe get you the tough yards in those goal line situations. But is this a running back by committee type of year where the running back room is so effective that you don't need a guy with 30-plus carries? You don't need a guy with 20-plus carries, 15, 15, 10. To get you right there in that 30 handoff mark because of the effectiveness. Do you think we are there, or do we force a 1-2 back type system where we have maybe a third guy like Daniel Hill relieving these guys, A.K. Deere and Kevin Riley being kind of your mop-up duty guys, Dre Washington just staying fresh? What do you all in the chat believe this is going to be? Run the comments up whether you're watching live or post-live. But from the staff, real quick, let's round circle 30 seconds. Jackson, running back by committee or feature back? And if it's a feature back, who's your feature back?
I think we're just going to run by committee, because I want to see it be kind of like 09, where it was like Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson just running the show. I want to see it be like that, where we've got all kinds of running backs for 2025.
Okay. Coach Burks, what you thinking?
I'm feature back. I mean, you got to have a rhythm. I mean, a feature back is going to have a rhythm with the offensive line and the blocking and stuff like that. I mean, if you're by committee, I mean, there's no rhythm with regard to that. And, the offensive line, I mean, when you're back there constantly, you can read their butts. You can see when they're turning their leg. I mean, you learn everything about, position with, the footwork and so, no, you got to have a feature back and develop rhythm with the offensive line, changing everybody, blah, 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 blah. No, I don't agree with it. But hey, I'm old school. Jeff?
What about you, Jeff? What you got?
I would prefer, like Coach Johnny, to have a feature back. I would prefer to have it be Jam Miller 65% of the time, and then the other guys play less. I think it's going to be Jam Miller is like a half feature back. I think he's going to be the number one. I think he's going to get the most snaps, but I feel like it's going to be slightly by committee too. Richard Young, Daniel Hill are going to get involved, specifically Richard Young being that secondary back. But I think Jam Miller is going to be getting the most carries. He's going to be the guy that gets talked about the most, across the media. Like, people are going to be discussing Jam Miller, like, hey, he's going to be that number one back. But I think Richard Young is going to be right behind. So I'm kind of in between you two. I think it's going to be slightly by committee, but I still feel like Jam Miller is going to be kind of still that number one guy.
I think we'll have a feature back. I think Richard Young will be our feature back. I think he'll be the one with the 60% of carries, and then you'll see Jam Miller with that 30%. Right there, that 30% of carries, and then you see a guy like Daniel Hill with 10%, getting those onesies and twosies where when it's his play call, when he's out there, it's either his call or it's specific assignment, and you'll see the wear and tear where guys like Damian Harris, my guy, just literally bringing up the trio I was talking about, Damian Harris, Josh Jacobs, Najee Harris. That year that they were there, we can't say that Josh Jacobs or Damian Harris was the feature back, because when Najee Harris got those third back rotations, he was just as effective. And I think when you look at the average yards per carry, even last year in the run game, Jalen Milroe with the most carries did not have the highest average. You had two backs in Jam Miller and Richard Young, both averaging more than 4.3 yards per carry. And if you listen to Coach Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb and what they want in their offense, they want backs. Their offensive average yards per carry, they want to be right there at the 4.5, 4.7 yard mark. Every back in the offense in the running back room last year that took carries and meaningful game time had that average or more. So I think with the quarterback taking less of the carries or not taking so many carries out of the running back's hands, I think we're going to see that effectiveness. And 10% of carries for Daniel Hill looks good at 40 carries for the season, being the third guy with 40 carries. Or, the second guy at 30% of carries. And Jam Miller, I believe, going to be more effective because of play calling. He's going to be in more of your pass sets. He's going to be your primary guy because of that, being able to be utilized equally in the pass and the run game. So I think that's where you see a level out for his numbers. But as far as ball carrier, I think Richard Young is going to be our bell horse, our bell cattle, and he's going to be the one that really sets the tone. But I do agree with you, Jeff. I think Jam Miller, because of his versatility, is going to be the guy that's talked about.